My parents sold my 9-year-old son's antique piano, the one his great-grandfather gave him, for $97,000. They used the money to build a home theater for my sister's kid. When Grandpa William found out, he didn't yell, he didn't cry. He didn't even raise his voice. He just smiled. The kind of smile that makes you check if the doors are locked. And he said, "That piano." My parents' faces turned pale. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. But I would. Everyone would. This is the story of how my family tried to erase my son, how they stole his inheritance and turned it into a cinema for a child who already had everything, and how my 72-year-old grandfather made sure they would never forget what they'd done. Some lessons come late, some debts get collected with interest, and some old men have been waiting decades for their children to show their true colors. I knew something was wrong before we even pulled into the driveway. You can smell a renovation the way you can smell a lie. There's something sharp underneath, something that doesn't belong, something that tells you money has been spent without your knowledge. Ethan sat in the back seat, his music folder on his lap, his small metronome tucked into the front pocket of his backpack. He was humming under his breath, the way he always did when he was happy. Chopin. The nocturne his great-grandfather taught him last spring. His fingers tapped rhythms on his knee, already halfway into that focused little world he disappeared into whenever music was involved. "Do you think Grandpa will come visit today?" he asked, pulling his ponytail tighter like he could control the universe with elastic. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "He's settling into his new place, remember? The senior community, but we can call him later if you want." Ethan nodded, but his eyes stayed hopeful anyway. Like maybe William had changed his mind overnight and driven back to the house just to hear him practice. My son had a gift for believing in people who actually deserved it. It was the people who didn't deserve it that worried me. "Mom?" His voice was smaller now. "Why does Grandma always ask about Jaden's grades but never about my recitals?" I didn't have a good answer for that. I'd been asking myself the same question for 9 years. "Grandma's just busy," I said. The lie tasted like dust. Ethan didn't push. He never did. That was the problem. We turned onto my parents' street, and that's when I saw the truck. A big white contractor's vehicle with a construction company logo on the side, parked right in the driveway like it owned the place. Behind it, a stack of materials sat by the garage. Wood, insulation, something wrapped in plastic that looked expensive. I pulled to the curb and cut the engine. The smell hit me the moment I opened my door. Fresh paint, sawdust. That sharp chemical tang of new things being built on top of old secrets. Maybe they're fixing the music room. Ethan was already unbuckling, his face bright with possibility. "Grandpa always said it needed better lighting." I didn't answer. My gut was already tightening, already sensing what my brain refused to acknowledge. We walked up to the front door. I had a key. Not because I was especially trusted, but because I was useful. There's a difference. One gets you love, the other gets you access codes and errands. I'd learned to stop confusing the two around the time Ethan was born. The second I opened the door, I heard it. Power tools. Muffled but unmistakable. Coming from the back of the house from the direction of the formal living room. And beneath that sound, voices, laughter, the comfortable chatter of people spending money they hadn't earned. Ethan tiptoed inside like he was entering a museum. The entryway had been transformed. Tarps covered the hallway runner. Cardboard boxes lined the walls. Someone had taped off sections with blue painter's tape, which in my family was a polite way of saying, "Don't touch anything, peasant." "What's going on?" Ethan whispered. I shook my head and kept walking. We passed the family photos on the wall. I'd stopped counting years ago how few of them included Ethan. My sister Melissa's son Jaden dominated every surface. Soccer trophies, school portraits, vacation snapshots from beaches I'd never been invited to visit. And Ethan? One photo, from 3 Christmases ago, partially hidden behind a decorative plant. The noise grew louder as we approached the back of the house. I could see it now through the archway. where my parents' formal living room used to be, where Clara's piano had sat for as long as I could remember, was now a construction zone. Workers in paint-spattered clothes moved with purpose. One of them carried a speaker the size of a small refrigerator. Another adjusted something on the ceiling, some kind of mount. And against the far wall, where the antique Bösendorfer had rested for decades, I saw a massive screen being installed. Projection equipment, acoustic panels, leather seats stacked in the corner, still wrapped in plastic. A home theater, a full professional home theater, right where my son's piano used to live. Whoa! Ethan's eyes went wide. Is this for movie nights? There was so much hope in his voice that I actually hated everyone I was related to in that moment. I don't know, I said carefully. Let's find your piano first. I pulled him away from the construction, toward the hallway, toward the music room where the Bösendorfer was supposed to be. The room William had set up specifically for Ethan's practice. Climate-controlled, humidity monitored. A lock on the door because my grandfather wasn't born yesterday. The door was open, the humidifier was still running, the sheet music was still on the shelves. William's old reading chair still sat in the corner. But the corner where the piano lived, where Ethan's piano rested like it belonged to him, like it had been waiting his whole life for him to grow into it, was empty. Not moved, not covered. Empty. Just carpet indentations where the legs used to press down. Marks from decades of sitting in one sacred spot. A ghost of something that was supposed to be permanent. Ethan didn't scream. He didn't even inhale. He just froze. Then he walked to the corner slowly, like approaching a wound, like if he moved too fast he might make it worse. He touched the wall where the piano used to lean, looked behind the chair, under the shelf. Searching for something that logic told him couldn't be there, but hope demanded he look for anyway. Then he turned to me. Did Grandpa change his mind? His voice was small, careful, like he was afraid to disturb the air, like the question itself might get him in trouble, not angry. That would have been easier. Angry I could have worked with. But this quiet acceptance, this assumption that he'd done something wrong, that he'd somehow earned being forgotten, this broke me. No, I said, and my throat was so tight the word barely escaped. Grandpa did not change his mind. Ethan nodded once, too hard, like he was forcing the moment to behave. His fingers drifted to the edge of the music stand, reaching for keys that weren't there. When he felt nothing, he pulled his hand back fast like he'd touched a hot stove. His eyes got glossy, but nothing fell. 9 years old, and he'd already learned to hold it in. I noticed something else missing then. The framed photograph that always sat on the piano. William and Clara on their wedding day, standing beside the Bösendorfer, young and hopeful and completely unaware of what their family would become. That was gone too. I knelt beside Ethan, gripped his shoulders, made him look at me. Grandpa did not change his mind, I repeated. Do you understand me? He loves you. He would never take the piano back. Then where is it? I didn't have an answer, not yet. But I could feel where this was heading, and every instinct I had was screaming that my son was standing in the middle of something ugly that I should have seen coming. Stay here, I told him. I'm going to find out what happened. I left him in the empty music room because I needed him not to see my face when I found out the truth. I could feel the anger building, but it wasn't hot. It was cold. The kind of cold that burned slow and didn't stop. I walked toward the kitchen. I'd spent 31 years being the good daughter, the one who didn't make waves, the one who let Melissa shine and Patricia control and Richard dismiss. I'd swallowed so much for the sake of family peace that I'd forgotten what my own voice sounded like. But my son was in that room right now, blaming himself for something he didn't do, teaching himself for the 100th time that he wasn't important enough to protect. That ended today. I reached the kitchen doorway and stopped. My mother sat at the table, phone in one hand, coffee mug in the other. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup perfect, her expression the carefully constructed mask of a woman who believed she was always right. My father scrolled through something on his tablet, calm as a man who'd never been told no in his life. And Melissa, my sister, perched on a stool by the counter, sipping something green and expensive, her designer bag hanging off her shoulder like a badge of honor. None of them looked up when I entered. I stepped into the kitchen. "Where is Ethan's piano?" My mother's cup froze halfway to her lips. My father's finger paused mid-scroll. And, "Melissa?" she smiled. That smile told me everything I needed to know. And nothing I wanted to hear. The kitchen went silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence between people who understand each other, the sharp kind. The kind that happens when someone asks a question nobody wants to answer. My mother set down her coffee cup with a careful clink. Her smile was back, but it didn't reach her eyes. It never did when she was about to lie. "Good morning to you too, Amanda." I didn't move, didn't smile back, didn't give her the satisfaction of pretending this was a normal Saturday. I said, "Where is Ethan's piano?" My father sighed. The sound of a man who believed the world should rearrange itself around his comfort. He set down his tablet and looked at me the way he'd looked at me my entire life, like I was a minor inconvenience between him and something more important. "What's the problem now?" The problem. Like my son's missing inheritance was a scheduling conflict. Like $97,000 of family history had simply been misplaced. "The piano," I repeated. "The Bosendorfer, Great-Grandma Clara's piano, the one Grandpa William gave to Ethan. Where is it?" Melissa snorted without looking up from her phone. "Oh, please." My mother took another sip of her coffee. Slow, deliberate, the gesture of a woman who controlled every room she entered. "Your father handled it." Handled it. That phrase had followed me through my entire childhood. Your father handled the college fund. Your father handled the inheritance split. Your father handled why Melissa got the new car and you got the used one. Handled was my family's favorite word for decisions made without my input or consent. Handled it how? My father finally looked up. His expression was calm, patient, the mask of a man who'd never been seriously challenged in his life. "We sold it." The words landed like stones dropped into still water. I felt the impact in my chest before my brain could process what he'd said. "You sold it?" "Yes." He said it like he was explaining basic math to a slow child. It was valuable. It was sitting there. Your grandfather wasn't even using it. Nobody was using it. Ethan was using it. My voice came out sharper than I intended. He practiced on it every Saturday. He was using it today until he walked in and found it gone. My mother waved a hand dismissively. "Amanda, don't start." Don't start. Another family favorite. Don't start meant shut up. Don't start meant your feelings are inconvenient. Don't start meant we already did what we wanted, and we're not interested in your opinion. "Don't start," I repeated. "You sold my son's piano, the piano his great-grandfather specifically gave to him, and you're telling me not to start?" My father leaned back in his chair. It was a family asset. We made a practical decision. A family asset. I tasted the words, and they burned. That's not what Grandpa William called it. He called it Ethan's inheritance. He put it in writing. Something flickered across my mother's face. Just for a second. Something that looked almost like fear. "Your grandfather says a lot of things," she said smoothly. "He's getting older, sentimental. You know how he is." I knew exactly how he was. William Collins was the sharpest person in any room he entered. He'd been running his own business until 5 years ago. He played chess 3 times a week and won more often than not. The idea that he was some confused old man making promises he couldn't keep was absurd, and my mother knew it. But she was betting I wouldn't push. She was betting 31 years of conditioning would keep me quiet. She was wrong. "How much?" My father raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me." "How much did you sell it for?" "The Bosendorfer, 1893 Imperial Grand." "How much?" He actually smiled, proud of himself. $97,000. Cash wire. The collector was very motivated. Quick sale, no hassle. $97,000. My son's inheritance, reduced to a transaction. And what did you do with the money? Melissa finally looked up from her phone. Her smile was back, the one she'd worn in the kitchen doorway, the one that said she knew something I didn't. We invested it in the family, my mother said, in the children. Which children? Nobody answered immediately, and in that silence, I heard the construction noise from the back of the house, the power tools, the workers installing the massive screen where Clara's piano used to sit. The home theater, I said. It wasn't a question. You sold Ethan's piano to build Jaden a home theater. My mother's chin lifted. The children deserve nice things. Which children? I asked again. Because I'm looking at a $97,000 movie room, and I'm not seeing anything that belongs to Ethan. Melissa set down her green juice with a sharp click. Jaden has been asking for a proper entertainment space for years. He has friends. He needs somewhere to socialize, unlike some kids who just sit in corners and play scales all day. I turned to my sister. We were only 3 years apart, but sometimes it felt like we'd grown up in different families. In a way we had. She'd grown up golden. I'd grown up useful. Ethan is 9 years old. He's a child. And you just funded your son's entertainment room with his inheritance. It's not like that, my mother interjected. Ethan can use the theater too. He can watch movies with Jaden. It'll be good for him. Good for him. My son's piano sold so he could watch movies in a room he was never invited to. Besides, my father added, you can rent a piano. Plenty of kids practice on rentals. It's not like he's going to be a concert pianist. The casualness of it stunned me. The absolute certainty that Ethan's dreams weren't worth protecting. That his talent wasn't worth investing in. That everything that mattered to him could be replaced with something cheaper because he wasn't important enough for the real thing. Clara's piano was irreplaceable, I said quietly. It was in our family for over 100 years. Her grandmother bought it for her wedding. It survived 2 world wars and a cross-country move. And you sold it because Jaden wanted a bigger TV. You're being dramatic. My mother's voice had that edge now, the one that meant she was losing patience with my existence. This is exactly why we didn't involve you in the decision. You always make everything so emotional. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and broken. You didn't involve me because you knew I'd say no. You didn't involve Grandpa William because you knew he'd stop you. The fear flickered across my mother's face again. This time it stayed longer. Speaking of which, I continued, does he know? Does Grandpa know you sold Clara's piano? The kitchen went very still. My father and mother exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that said they'd discussed this exact scenario, the kind that told me everything about how deliberate their betrayal had been. Your grandfather doesn't need to know, my mother said carefully. He's settling into his new place. The doctors said he needs calm, stability. We don't want to upset him. The doctors said that? Or you did? Amanda. My father's voice carried a warning now. We're telling you how it's going to be. Dad doesn't need the stress. His heart isn't what it used to be. If you go running to him with this, you'll be the one who hurts him. Is that what you want? There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. The manipulation disguised as care. If I told Grandpa William, I'd be the villain. I'd be the one who caused his heart attack. I'd be responsible for whatever happened next. It was the same playbook they'd used my entire life. Do something wrong. Demand silence. Make the victim feel guilty for being hurt. It had worked before. Every single time. I'd swallowed my anger and kept the peace and told myself that family mattered more than fairness. But I wasn't looking at my family anymore. I was looking at the people who'd stolen from my son. I'm calling him, I said. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Absolutely not. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. Amanda, think about what you're doing. She moved toward me, hands raised like she was trying to calm a wild animal. We're your parents. We did this for everyone, for the family. If you go to your grandfather, you'll tear us apart. You tore us apart when you sold a 9-year-old's piano to build a cinema for his cousin. Melissa's voice cut in from behind me. God, you're so jealous. You've always been jealous. Of me, of Jaden, of everything I have. This is just your way of getting back at us. I turned to my sister, really looked at her. The designer clothes, the expensive haircut, the absolute certainty that she deserved everything she had, even when it was stolen from a child. This isn't about jealousy, I said. This is about the fact that you took something that didn't belong to you, something that belonged to Ethan, and you didn't even have the decency to tell him first. He's 9, he'll get over it. He thought Grandpa William changed his mind about him. He thought his great-grandfather stopped loving him. He's in that empty room right now wondering what he did wrong. For just a moment, something flickered across Melissa's face. Something that might have been shame, but it was gone before I could be sure, replaced by the defensive anger I knew so well. That's not our problem. You're his mother. You explain it to him. I stared at her, at all of them. My mother with her careful mask, my father with his dismissive calm, my sister with her designer indifference. These were the people who were supposed to love me, supposed to love my son. And they'd sold his inheritance without a second thought because Jaden wanted something nicer. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. Amanda! My mother's voice followed me. Amanda, don't you dare! I didn't stop. I walked down the hall, past the family photos that didn't include my son, past the construction noise that used to be silence, back to the music room where Ethan waited. He was still there, sitting on the floor now, his music folder open on his lap. Sheet music for the Chopin nocturne he'd been planning to practice. The piece his great-grandfather taught him, the piece he'd never play on Clara's piano again. He looked up when I entered. His eyes were dry, but I could see the effort it was taking. They sold it, didn't they? Not a question, a statement, like he'd already known and was just waiting for confirmation. How did you know? He shrugged, too small, too resigned for a 9-year-old. Aunt Melissa told Jaden last week. Jaden told me at school. He looked down at his sheet music. He said I wouldn't need it anymore anyway. My heart cracked clean in two. You knew for a week? You didn't tell me? Another shrug. I didn't want to make trouble. Didn't want to make trouble. 9 years old and already convinced that his pain was less important than everyone else's comfort. That speaking up would only make things worse. That the best thing he could do was be small and quiet and invisible. I knelt beside him and pulled him into my arms. He didn't resist, but he didn't melt into me either. He stayed stiff, controlled, protecting himself even from comfort. Jaden said something else, he mumbled into my shoulder. What? He said Grandpa probably wanted to get rid of it anyway. He said old people forget who they love. I held him tighter, felt the anger building in my chest, colder and harder than anything I'd felt before. That's not true, I said. Grandpa William loves you more than anything. He didn't forget. He didn't change his mind. He didn't know this was happening. Ethan pulled back and looked at me, his grandfather's eyes. Clara's eyes. Steady and old and far too wise for 9 years. Are you going to tell him? I thought about the threats, the manipulation, the guilt they'd tried to load onto my shoulders. I thought about my father's warning that I'd be the one to hurt William, that I'd be responsible for whatever happened next. And then I thought about my son, sitting in an empty room, blaming himself for someone else's cruelty. Learning one more time that he wasn't worth protecting. Yes, I said. I'm going to tell him everything. Ethan nodded slowly. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he said, Good. We walked out of the music room together, past the construction, past the kitchen where I could hear my mother's voice rising in agitation, past the front door and into the sunlight. I buckled Ethan into the car, got behind the wheel, started the engine. As I pulled away from the house, I saw my mother appear in the doorway, Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. Good. Tonight I would call Grandpa William. I would tell him everything. And whatever happened after that, whatever bridges burned and whatever relationships shattered, I would not let my son grow up believing he didn't matter. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Ethan stared out the window, watching the house disappear. Mom? Yes, baby? What if Grandma and Grandpa get really mad? I gripped the steering wheel and thought about every slight, every dismissal, every stolen moment. Then, they'll finally know how it feels. Ethan nodded slowly. And for the first time all day, something in his face relaxed. We drove toward home. Toward the phone call that would change everything. Toward the moment my family would learn that silence has a price. And they'd just run out of credit. The apartment felt smaller when we got home. Not physically, but in every other way that mattered. The walls seemed closer. The silence seemed louder. Even the light coming through the windows seemed tired. Ethan walked past his keyboard without looking at it. The $60 Yamaha I'd bought from a garage sale 2 years ago, the one he practiced on when we couldn't make it to my parents' house. It wasn't the same as Clara's Bosendorfer. It wasn't even close. But it was what I could afford after the divorce, and Ethan had never once complained. He went straight to his room and closed the door. Not a slam, just a click. That quiet click was worse than any tantrum. It was the sound of a child who'd learned that big emotions weren't welcome. I stood alone in the kitchen. The counter was covered with bills I'd been avoiding. The refrigerator hummed its familiar song. Everything was exactly as we'd left it this morning, and yet nothing was the same. I looked at the table where Ethan had left his music folder. It was open to the Chopin Nocturne, the piece he'd been planning to practice. In the margin, in Grandpa William's careful handwriting, was a note. For my Ethan, play this when you miss me. My throat tightened. I pressed my palm against my eyes and forced myself to breathe. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The apartment stayed silent. I walked to Ethan's door and knocked softly. Honey, can I come in? A pause. Then, okay. Not yes, just okay. Permission without enthusiasm. I opened the door. His room was small but tidy, organized with the precision of a child who'd learned that taking up too little space was safer than taking up too much. Posters of classical composers covered one wall. Chopin, Debussy, Beethoven. A gift from Grandpa William for his 7th birthday. Ethan sat on his bed, holding something in his hands. A photograph. I recognized it immediately. It was from his first recital 2 years ago. Ethan and William at the piano, their heads bent together, matching smiles on their faces. The only recital anyone had attended. Just Grandpa. Just him. Do you think he'll be mad at me? Ethan asked without looking up. Who? Grandpa? He nodded. For losing it. The piano. My heart splintered into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. You didn't lose anything. I sat beside him on the bed. It was taken. That's not the same thing. Ethan shrugged. That terrible small shrug again. It's gone either way, right? I wanted to scream. Not at him. At everyone who'd taught him that his pain didn't matter. At myself, for letting it happen. Ethan, look at me. He raised his eyes. William's eyes. Clara's eyes. The same quiet depth that saw everything and said very little. None of this is your fault. Do you understand? You didn't do anything wrong. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Not really. 9 years of being overlooked had taught him something different. I remembered when it started. The moment I should have seen the pattern and didn't, or maybe I did see it and chose not to look. 2 years ago. Ethan's 7th birthday. I'd planned a party. Nothing fancy, just family. I'd ordered a cake shaped like a piano keyboard, bought decorations in his favorite colors, sent invitations to everyone, even though everyone was really just my parents, Melissa, Derek, and Jaden. The morning of the party, my mother called. We need to reschedule, she said. No greeting, no apology, just the announcement. Reschedule? Mom, the party is today. The cake is ready. Ethan's been counting down for weeks. Jaden has his championship soccer game this afternoon. You understand, right? This is important for his future. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and felt the familiar tightening in my chest. The one that always came when my family asked me to make myself smaller. But it's Ethan's birthday. Amanda. My mother's sigh was the sound of someone explaining something obvious to someone slow. Birthdays happen every year. Championships don't. Melissa already told everyone to come to the game instead. You can do the party next weekend. Mom, I can't just... It's handled. We'll see you at the field at 2. Ethan likes soccer, doesn't he? Ethan didn't like soccer. He'd never shown any interest in sports at all. But that didn't matter to my mother. What Ethan liked had never mattered to my mother. I hung up and stood there, trying to figure out how to tell my 7-year-old that his birthday had been canceled for his cousin's soccer game. I didn't have to tell him. He'd been standing in the hallway, listening. He wore his pajamas and his bedhead, and his eyes were too old for his face. "It's okay, Mom," he said. "We can do it later." He said it like he meant it, like he'd already learned that his things could be moved, his moments could be postponed, his joy could wait for more important people. The party never happened. Next weekend became next month, and next month became, we'll do something special for Christmas. And Christmas came and went without anyone mentioning the birthday that got erased. Ethan never asked about it again. He just stopped expecting. But someone remembered. That afternoon, while we were supposed to be at Jaden's soccer game, Grandpa William showed up at our apartment. He had a small cake in one hand and a wrapped present in the other. "I heard there was a birthday happening," he said, winking at Ethan. "Mind if I crash the party?" They spent the whole afternoon together, playing piano, eating cake, talking about music and composers and all the things Ethan loved that nobody else had time for. When William left that evening, Ethan hugged him so hard I thought he might break. The present that day was a book of Chopin nocturnes. The same book that was now sitting on my kitchen table, with William's note in the margin. I looked at my son now, still holding that photograph, still blaming himself for something he didn't do. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Why didn't you tell me? When Jaden told you about the piano, why didn't you come to me?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to make you sad. You already had a lot of things to worry about, with the job and the bills and everything." 9 years old, protecting his mother from his own pain, swallowing his grief so I wouldn't have to carry it. "Ethan, you never have to protect me like that. Your feelings matter, your sadness matters, you matter." He looked up at me. "Do I?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Of course you do." "Then why doesn't anyone else think so?" I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, and it was too ugly to say out loud. Because our family was broken, because they'd picked their favorites a long time ago, and Ethan wasn't on the list, because I'd spent years trying to keep the peace instead of fighting for my son. I thought about his recital, 8 months ago, the winter concert at the community center. Ethan had been practicing for weeks, Chopin again. The nocturne William had taught him. He was so nervous and so proud and so desperate for someone to witness what he could do. I invited everyone, my parents, Melissa, Derek, Jaden. I called and texted and reminded them 3 times. "It would mean so much to him," I said. "Please." My mother said she'd try, but December was so busy. My father mentioned something about golf. Melissa promised to send Jaden's nanny to record it, then forgot. Nobody came. The community center had plastic chairs and fluorescent lights and a piano that was only slightly out of tune. Ethan sat backstage in his one nice shirt, the one we'd bought together at the thrift store. He'd combed his hair with water. He looked like a tiny gentleman waiting for his moment. Every time the door opened, his eyes jumped to it. Every time it wasn't them, his shoulders dropped a little more. 5 minutes before his turn, the door opened one last time. Grandpa William walked in using his cane, moving slowly but deliberately. He found a seat in the front row, waved at Ethan, and Ethan's whole face changed, like someone had turned on a light that had been off for a very long time. He played beautifully that night. Not perfect, but real. The notes filled the small room, and I watched my son perform for an audience of one. One person who actually wanted to be there. Afterward, William hugged him for a long time. He whispered something in Ethan's ear that I couldn't hear. Later in the car, I asked what Grandpa had said. Ethan smiled. He said the piano will always be mine, no matter what. I'd thought it was sweet, a grandfather reassuring his great-grandson. Now I realized it was a promise. And a warning. There was something else that night. As we walked to our cars, William put his hand on my arm. "Amanda, I need you to promise me something." "What is it?" "If they ever try to take what's his, you call me. Day or night, don't try to handle it yourself, call me." I'd laughed. "They wouldn't do that, Grandpa." He didn't laugh. His eyes were serious in a way I'd rarely seen. "Promise me, Amanda." I promised, without understanding, without believing I'd ever need to keep it. I should have known better. William always understood our family better than I did. He'd been watching them for 40 years. He knew what they were capable of. I looked at Ethan now, the photograph still in his hands, his small body curled inward, taking up as little space as possible. "I don't want you to fight with Grandma and Grandpa," he said quietly. "They get really mad when people fight with them." I heard what he was really saying. I don't want you to get hurt like I do. 9 years old and already protecting everyone but himself. Something shifted inside me, not a crack, a hardening. I'd spent 31 years being the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed things over. The one who sacrificed so others didn't have to be uncomfortable. I'd told myself it was maturity, wisdom, keeping the family together. But what had it cost? My son sitting on his bed, blaming himself for being robbed. My son learning that his voice didn't count. My son believing that taking up space was dangerous. Peace built on my child's silence wasn't peace. It was complicity. "Ethan, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it." He looked up at me. "From now on, things are going to be different. I'm not going to let anyone treat you like you don't matter. Not Grandma, not Grandpa Richard, not Aunt Melissa, not anyone. Do you understand?" "What about keeping the peace?" "There is no peace worth keeping if it means watching you disappear." His eyes filled with tears. Finally, the tears he'd been holding back all day. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "Do you think Grandpa William will be okay when you tell him?" I pulled him close and held him while he cried. "I think Grandpa William has been waiting for this. I think he knew, somehow, and I think he has a plan." That night, I waited until Ethan was asleep. I checked on him at 10, found him curled around his pillow, the photograph of him and William tucked under his hand. I covered him gently, took the picture and set it on his nightstand, watched him breathe. Then I went to the kitchen and picked up my phone. It was 11:47, too late to call an elderly man. Any reasonable person would wait until morning, but William had said day or night, and I was done being reasonable. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. The phone rang once, twice, I almost hung up. Third ring, click. "Amanda?" His voice was alert, not sleepy at all, like he'd been waiting. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something. It's about the piano." Silence on the line. The kind of silence that holds its breath. Then, softly, "They sold it, didn't they?" I froze. "How did you know?" I had a feeling, when they stopped answering my calls about visiting Ethan, when Patricia changed the subject every time I asked about practice. I hoped I was wrong. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I didn't know until today. I would have called sooner. I would have—" "Don't apologize for them." His voice was gentle but firm. "That's not your job anymore." I told him everything. The home theater. The $97,000. Melissa's smirk, the way they'd tried to silence me, and worst of all, Ethan's question in the empty room. Did Grandpa change his mind? When I finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. I expected anger, grief, maybe tears. What I heard was a soft laugh. "Oh, Amanda." Grandpa? Did they really think I wouldn't find out? Did they really think I wouldn't prepare? My heart started beating faster. "What do you mean, prepare?" Another soft laugh. "That piano was never theirs to sell. It's been in a trust since the day Ethan was born, the Clara Collins Memorial Trust. Single asset, single beneficiary. Your parents didn't sell a family heirloom. They sold property that legally belongs to a minor." I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. "They didn't sell a family asset," William continued. "They committed fraud, and I have documentation to prove it. What are you going to do?" His voice went calm, cold, certain. "I'm going to teach them something I should have taught them 40 years ago, that actions have consequences. Grandpa, I need you to trust me, Amanda. Can you do that?" I thought about the empty music room, the photograph under Ethan's hand, the 9 years of small hurts that had led to this moment. "Yes." "Good. Give me 1 week. Stay away from them. Don't answer their calls. Let me work." "And then?" "And then they'll learn what it costs to steal from family." I closed my eyes. "What about Ethan?" William's voice softened. "Tell him his piano is coming home. Tell him his great-grandfather keeps his promises." "And Amanda?" "Yes?" "Tell him Clara would have been so proud of him." I hung up and stood in the dark kitchen. 1 week. 1 week of waiting. 1 week of watching my family squirm without knowing why. And then, whatever came next would come. I walked back to Ethan's room and watched him sleep. "Your piano is coming home," I whispered. "Grandpa promised." In his sleep, Ethan smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him all day. 7 days felt like 7 years. 7 days of waiting, wondering, checking my phone every hour for a message that never came. 7 days of pretending everything was normal while knowing nothing would ever be normal again. William had asked me to trust him. "Give me 1 week," he'd said. And I'd agreed, because what choice did I have? Because he was the only person in my family who had ever kept a promise to my son. But trust is easier to give than to hold on to when the silence stretches long. Ethan went to school, did his homework, ate his vegetables, moved through the days like a small ghost, present but not quite there. He didn't touch his keyboard once, not a single note. The silence in our apartment felt like a held breath, like the whole world was waiting for something to break. My phone buzzed constantly, but never with the message I wanted. Patricia called twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. Melissa texted a string of demands and accusations. Richard sent one message, cold and clinical, warning me not to make things worse. I responded to none of them. For the first time in my life, I didn't apologize, didn't explain, didn't smooth things over. It felt like freedom. It felt like falling. Thursday night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My heart jumped. "Saturday, 2 p.m. My place. Bring Ethan." A pause, then simply, "W." Short, certain, no room for questions. Whatever was coming, it was coming soon. Saturday arrived gray and cool, the kind of autumn afternoon that couldn't decide between rain and reluctant sunshine. I drove to Willow Creek Senior Living with Ethan in the back seat. Both of us quiet, both of us nervous, both of us hoping for something we couldn't quite name. "Is Grandpa okay?" Ethan asked as we pulled into the parking lot. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "I think he's more than okay." "What does that mean?" "I think it means he has a plan." Willow Creek was nicer than I'd expected. Not fancy, but comfortable. Well-maintained grounds, friendly staff, the kind of place where people went to live, not just to wait. William had chosen it himself, over Patricia's objections. She'd wanted somewhere more prestigious, more expensive, more impressive to mention at dinner parties. William wanted somewhere peaceful, somewhere he could think. I was beginning to understand why. We walked to his unit, Ethan holding my hand. His palm was sweaty. Mine was too. The door opened before I could knock. William stood there in his usual cardigan and khakis. But something was different. He looked sharper, more alert, like a man who'd been resting for years and finally had a reason to wake up. He hugged Ethan first, long and tight and wordless. Then me. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for trusting me." Inside, his apartment was small but warm. Photos of Clara everywhere. Her smile watching us from the dresser, the bookshelf, the wall above his reading chair. The smell of peppermint tea filled the air. And on the dining table sat a briefcase. Old leather, brass clasps. I'd never seen it before. "Sit down," William said. "Both of you, I have a lot to tell you." He made tea. Peppermint for us, hot chocolate for Ethan. Moved through his small kitchen with the careful precision of a man who had learned to do everything himself. When we were all settled, cups warming our hands, William reached for the briefcase. "I need to tell you both a story," he said. "About the piano, about Clara, about why your parents made a very serious mistake." Ethan leaned forward. I held my breath. "The piano was a wedding gift," William began. 1952. Clara's grandmother sold everything she had to buy it, jewelry, furniture, even her own instrument. She said Clara deserved something worthy of her talent. He pulled out a photograph, black and white. A young couple standing beside a grand piano. William and Clara on their wedding day, both of them young and hopeful and completely unaware of what the future would hold. Clara played that piano every night for 53 years. Through 4 houses and 2 states and everything life threw at us. When she got sick, when her hands couldn't manage the keys anymore, she made me promise. His voice caught. He took a breath. She made me promise the piano would go to someone who would love it. Not sell it, not store it, not see it as an asset to be liquidated. Someone who would hear it the way I heard her. "Did you know who that would be?" Ethan asked quietly. William smiled. "Not for years. Your father never showed interest. Patricia certainly didn't. She asked me to sell it more than once, said it was wasted space." He looked at Ethan. "Then you were born. And the first time you came to our house, 3 years old and barely able to reach the keys, you walked up to that piano and pressed one note. Just one. And you listened. Waited for it to fade completely before pressing another." Ethan's eyes were wide. Most children bang on the keys, make noise, but you listened. William's voice grew thick. "That's when I knew. Clara would have chosen you." He reached into the briefcase and withdrew a document. Official looking, legal language, stamps and signatures. "This is the Clara Collins Memorial Trust. I established it 7 years ago when Ethan was 2. Single asset, the Bosendorfer Imperial Grand Piano. Single beneficiary, Ethan James Collins." The words landed like stones in still water. "The piano was never a family asset," William continued. "It was never something your parents had any right to touch. It belongs to Ethan, legally, completely, irrevocably." I stared at the document, at the language I could barely understand but somehow felt in my bones. "They sold something that wasn't theirs," I said slowly. "Yes." "They sold property held in trust for a minor." "Yes." "That's not just wrong, that's illegal." William nodded. "Under state law, it's classified as conversion, selling trust property without authorization. In criminal terms, it could be charged as theft or fraud." Ethan spoke up, his voice small but steady. "Does this mean I can get it back?" William reached over and took his great-grandson's hand. "It means the piano was always yours. It still is. And no one, not your grandparents, not anyone, can change that." I felt something shift in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of justice. "What about the buyer?" I asked. "The collector who paid $97,000? Andrew Chen has been in contact with him. He's a legitimate collector who believed he was making a legitimate purchase. When he learned the truth, he was furious." William smiled thinly. "Not at us. At your parents'. He's cooperating fully with recovery efforts. The piano is coming back? It's already secured. Andrew arranged pickup 3 days ago. It's in climate-controlled storage, waiting. Ethan made a sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Relief escaping in a rush. But there's something else, William said. Something about the house. I looked up. The house? William reached into the briefcase again. Withdrew another document. Older than the first. Yellowed with age. A property deed. When Clara and I bought that house in 1978, we paid cash. Put it in both our names. When she died, ownership transferred solely to me. He met my eyes. I never gave it to your parents, Amanda. I let them live there. That's not the same thing. The words hung in the air. They've been living in your house, I said slowly, for 40 years, and they think they own it. They assumed. They never asked, just like with the piano. William's expression hardened. They see what they want to see, and they take what they think no one is watching. Why? I asked. Why let them believe it was theirs for so long? Because I know my son, and I knew Patricia the moment I met her. If I'd given them the house, they would have mortgaged it within 5 years, sold it within 10, used it as leverage in ways Clara never would have wanted. He paused. Some things need to be protected from the people who think they own them. Ethan, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. So they're living in your house, and they sold my piano, and they used the money to build a movie theater. William looked at his great-grandson with something like pride. That's exactly right. What are you going to do? William leaned back in his chair. I've had 40 years to watch your father make choices. 40 years to hope he'd become the man Clara believed he could be. 40 years of disappointment. His voice was steady. But stealing from a child to build himself a cinema, that's where it ends. He outlined the plan in simple terms. Step 1, recover the piano. Already done. Step 2, notify Richard and Patricia of the trust violation and their legal liability. Happening Monday. Step 3, address the living situation. They built a $97,000 home theater in my house, William said, using money stolen from my great-grandson, without asking permission, without even considering that they might not have the right. What happens to them? I asked. They have 60 days to find somewhere else to live. The number landed like a verdict. 60 days. The same arbitrary timeline they'd given Ethan when they erased his piano from existence. And if they fight it? William's smile was thin. Andrew has a file that will bury them. Documentation going back 40 years. Every communication, every assumption, every lie. If they want to take this to court, they'll lose. And they'll lose publicly. I thought about my parents, their pride, their carefully constructed image, the way they'd spent decades presenting themselves as successful, generous, respectable people. All of it built on a foundation of borrowed everything. Ethan spoke again. Grandpa, why did they do it? William was quiet for a moment. When he answered, his voice was gentle. Because they've always put some people first and others last. Your mother was always last in their eyes, and because you're her son, they treated you the same way. That's not fair. No, it isn't. But that's the truth. Ethan absorbed this, his small hands clasped in his lap, processing something no 9-year-old should have to process. Then he nodded, once, firm. I don't want to be last anymore. William knelt down, his knees protesting, looked Ethan directly in the eye. You were never last to me, or to Clara, and from now on, you won't be last to anyone. He put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. I'm going to make sure of that. As we prepared to leave, William handed me a folder. Keep this safe, copies of everything. The trust document, the property deed, Andrew's contact information. If anything happens to me, you'll have what you need. Grandpa, you're scaring me. Are you okay? He smiled, warm this time. I'm 72, not fragile, But I've learned to prepare for everything. Your father taught me that, by never being prepared for anything himself. At the door, he gave us final instructions. Next Saturday, there's a party at the house. Melissa's home theater reveal. Very exclusive. I remembered the invitation I'd been ignoring. I wasn't planning to go. William's eyes glinted. Change your plans. Bring Ethan. Wear something comfortable. Why? Because we're going to need witnesses. He paused. And it's going to be a long afternoon. I hesitated at the threshold. Grandpa, what exactly is going to happen at that party? William picked up his teacup, took a slow sip. His expression was calm as a summer morning. Justice, sweetheart, the kind that needs an audience. I looked at Ethan, at the hope in his eyes, at the way he stood a little straighter than he had an hour ago. We'll be there. William nodded, satisfied. One more thing, he said. Tell Ethan the piano is coming home. Tell him his great-grandfather keeps his promises. He looked at my son. And tell him Clara would have been so proud of the musician he's becoming, of the person he already is. We drove home in the fading afternoon light. Ethan was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of a boy who'd learned to be invisible. The silence of a boy who was thinking, planning, hoping. Mom? Yes, baby? Do you think it'll really work, Grandpa's plan? I thought about William, about his patience, his preparation, the 40 years he'd spent watching and waiting and documenting. I think Grandpa has been getting ready for this his whole life, I said. And I think your other grandparents have no idea what's coming. Ethan nodded slowly. Good. He turned to look out the window, watching the world pass by. Mom? Yes? When the piano comes back, can I play the nocturne first, the one Grandpa taught me? My eyes burned. You can play whatever you want, baby. It's your piano. It always was. He smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. 6 more days until the party. 6 more days until everything changed. I gripped the steering wheel and drove toward home. Toward whatever came next. The morning after William's call, I woke to unfamiliar silence. Not the silence of peace. The silence of anticipation. The kind that hums beneath your skin like a current waiting to spark. Ethan was already awake. I found him at his keyboard, not playing, just touching the keys, running his fingers over them like he was remembering something better. I'm practicing in my head, he said without looking up, for when the real one comes back. My heart cracked and healed in the same breath. That's a good idea. Grandpa said to trust him, so I'm trusting him. 9 years old and already better at faith than I'd ever been. The weeks stretched ahead of us like a minefield. 6 days until whatever William had planned. 6 days of pretending I didn't know what was coming. He'd been clear on the phone. Act normal. Don't warn them. Surprise is the only advantage we have. I wasn't sure I could fake it. But for Ethan, I would try. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from my mother. Amanda, we need to talk. Call me today. Not a request. A summons. The tone she used when she expected immediate obedience. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, busy today, maybe later this week. The read receipt appeared instantly. She was watching, waiting, testing. The game had already begun. Monday morning, my phone rang during my job interview prep. I'd been unemployed for 3 months, ever since the company I worked for downsized. Another thing my family knew and used against me. Another reason Ethan didn't need that expensive piano, according to them. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. Finally. My mother's voice was sweet on the surface, steel underneath. I've been trying to reach you all weekend. I told you I was busy. Too busy for your own mother? I didn't take the bait. What do you need? I wanted to check on you. You left so abruptly on Saturday. You seemed upset about the renovations. The renovations, that's what she was calling it now. Not the theft. Not the betrayal. The renovations. I was surprised. I said carefully. That's all. Surprised about what? About the piano being gone. Ethan was looking forward to practicing. A pause. I could almost hear her calculating. Amanda, we've been over this. The piano was just sitting there. Ethan can practice at school, or you could rent one. We made a practical decision for the whole family. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I understand, I said. I didn't. Good. Her voice shifted, becoming casual in a way that made my neck prickle. By the way, have you spoken to your grandfather lately? There it was, the real reason for the call. Not really, why? He's been odd, hasn't returned your father's calls. We're a little worried about him. Worried, right. Worried he might find out what they'd done. I'm sure he's just settling in, I said. He's 72, Mom. Maybe he's tired. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. Well, if you do talk to him, let us know. We want to make sure he's all right. I promised nothing, she noticed. Amanda, you'll tell us if something's wrong? I'll talk to you later, Mom. I hung up before she could push harder. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from restraint. 31 years of telling my mother what she wanted to hear, and now I had to do it for 6 more days. I could do this. I had to. Tuesday brought Melissa. The texts started around noon, one after another piling up like accusations. Mom says you're being weird. What's your problem? You're not still upset about the piano thing, right? It's a piano, Amanda, get over it. Jaden is so excited about the theater. You should see his face. I read each one, responded to none. When texting failed, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was exactly what I expected. Okay, so you're ignoring me. Very mature. Look, I need you at the reveal party Saturday. Mom wants family photos. Wear something nice for once. And bring Ethan. Jaden wants to show him the surround sound. Call me back. Jaden wants to show Ethan the surround sound bought with Ethan's inheritance. I saved the voicemail. Evidence of tone, if nothing else. That evening, another text arrived. This one from Derek, Melissa's husband. Hey, Amanda. Sorry about all this. For what it's worth, I told them it was a bad idea. I stared at the message. Derek had never texted me directly before. In 15 years of marriage to my sister, he'd barely spoken to me at family gatherings. He existed in Melissa's shadow, agreeing with whatever she said, funding whatever she wanted. Why was he reaching out now? Was he trying to distance himself? Did he sense something coming? I didn't respond to him either, but I filed it away. A crack in the facade, maybe. Or a trap. Wednesday, my father called. This was unusual. Richard never called directly. Patricia usually handled what they called Amanda management. The fact that he was reaching out himself meant they were escalating. Your mother's concerned, he said without greeting. She thinks you're planning something. I almost laughed. Planning what? I don't know, but you've been quiet. That's not like you. Not like me to be quiet. Not like me to stop apologizing. Not like me to refuse the role they'd assigned me. I've just been busy, Dad, job hunting. Right. He didn't believe me. You haven't told your grandfather about the piano, have you? Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because he doesn't need that kind of stress. His heart isn't what it used to be. The doctors... Which doctors? Have you talked to his doctors? A pause. Amanda, don't take that tone with me. I forced my voice flat. I haven't told him anything. Technically true. He already knew. Richard exhaled. Good. Keep it that way. What's done is done. Telling him now only hurts him. I understand. Good. His voice warmed slightly, the reward for compliance. Look, I know you think we favor Melissa, but we're doing what's best for everyone. The theater will be great for family gatherings. You'll use it too. Ethan can watch movies with Jaden. It'll be good for him. Good for him. My son's inheritance turned into movie nights for his cousin. I'm sure it will be wonderful, I managed. See you Saturday. Wear something nice. The same instruction as Melissa. Coordinated messaging. They'd talked about how to handle me. I hung up and stared at the wall. 3 more days. 3 more days of swallowing glass. That night, I called Grandpa William. "They're getting nervous," I told him, "asking if I've talked to you." His chuckle was soft. "Good, let them sweat." "Is everything ready?" "Andrew filed the paperwork today. We're right on schedule." "What paperwork?" A pause. "You'll see Saturday. Trust the process, sweetheart." I did trust him, but the waiting was torture. Thursday after school, Ethan came home quieter than usual. I asked about his day. He shrugged. "Fine." Then he looked at me with those old eyes of his. "Mom, why do you look so tired?" I hadn't realized it showed. "You keep checking your phone," he continued, "and you don't sleep. I hear you walking around at night." I knelt to his level. "I'm just thinking about things." "About Saturday?" "Yes." "About what Grandpa's going to do?" I hesitated. How much should a 9-year-old know about family warfare? "It's okay, Mom." Ethan's voice was steady. "I know something's happening. Grandpa said the piano's coming back, and that things will be different. I don't know what that means exactly, but I trust him." He paused. "Don't you?" I pulled him into a hug. "I do. I really do." We stayed like that for a long moment. Then Ethan pulled back. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "After Saturday, can we not go to Grandma's house anymore? I don't like how I feel there, small, like I'm in the way." My heart shattered for the 100th time that week. "You will never have to feel that way again," I promised. "Never." He nodded, then added, almost as an afterthought, "Jaden told everyone at school his family is rich now. He said his grandparents bought him a movie theater." I felt the anger rise in my chest. "I didn't say anything," Ethan continued, "but that's not true, right?" I looked at my son, his confusion, his quiet dignity, his refusal to fight back even when he'd been robbed. "No, baby, that's not true at all, and soon everyone will know it." Friday morning, the invitation arrived. A printed card in a cream envelope. Formal, official, absurd. "You are cordially invited to the Collins Family Home Theater reveal. Saturday, 2 p.m. refreshments provided. Dress code, smart casual." I read it 3 times. The audacity of formalizing their theft was almost impressive. They were so confident, so certain they'd gotten away with it. They had no idea what was coming. That evening, William called one last time. "Tomorrow's the day," he said. "Are you ready?" "I think so. What should I expect?" "Expect them to be surprised. Expect them to be angry. Expect them to blame you." He paused. "Can you handle that?" I looked across the room. Ethan was at the keyboard, playing scales softly, preparing for a piano that hadn't arrived yet, believing it would. "Yes," I told William. "I can handle anything for him." "That's my girl." Pride in his voice. Real pride. The kind I'd been waiting my whole life to hear from my parents. "Andrew will meet us there at 2:15, he continued. "Let them have their moment first. Let them feel proud. Then we'll remind them what pride costs." "Is this really going to work?" His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Sweetheart, I've been planning this since the day they looked at my great-grandson like he didn't matter. They just didn't know they were being watched." Before he hung up, he added one more thing. "The piano, it's been recovered. Andrew picked it up yesterday. It's in secure storage, waiting." My breath caught. "Where?" "Patience. Ethan will see it soon enough. But first we have a theater to unveil." The irony in his voice was unmistakable. That night, I checked on Ethan at 10. He'd fallen asleep with sheet music on his chest. The Chopin Nocturne, Grandpa's note still in the margin. I covered him gently and took the pages, set them on his nightstand next to the photograph of him and William at the recital. Then I sat alone in the dark living room. Tomorrow would change everything. My relationship with my parents, already fractured, would shatter completely. Melissa would never forgive me. The family I'd known would cease to exist. I thought about what I'd be losing. Sunday dinners I'd never enjoyed. Holiday gatherings where Ethan was invisible. phone calls that always left me feeling smaller. Then I thought about what I'd be gaining. A son who knew he was worth fighting for. A grandfather who kept his promises. A future where silence didn't mean surrender. Was it worth it? I thought about the birthday party that never happened. The recital no one attended. The piano sold without a word. The home theater built on my child's stolen future. Yes, it was worth it. Not for revenge, not for satisfaction, for Ethan. For the boy who learned to be small. Tomorrow he would learn something different. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Collins, this is Andrew Chen. Confirmed for tomorrow. See you at 2:15. I typed back, "Thank you, we'll be there." Then I set the phone down and watched the city lights through my window. Tomorrow. 6 days of waiting. And now it was almost here. Saturday morning, I woke at 6. My first thought was, today. My second thought was, no turning back. I showered, dressed, made breakfast. Went through the motions of a normal morning while my pulse hammered in my ears. Ethan appeared in the kitchen already dressed. His good shirt, pants without holes, hair combed with water. "I'm ready," he said. I looked at him. So small, so determined. Me too. We got in the car at 1:30, plenty of time to arrive exactly on schedule. Ethan was quiet as we drove, but not anxious. He trusted his grandfather, he trusted his mother. I merged onto the highway toward my parents' house, toward the party, toward whatever came next. "Mom?" Ethan's voice from the back seat. "Yes? What if Grandma and Grandpa get really mad?" I gripped the steering wheel and thought about every slight, every dismissal, every stolen moment. Then they'll finally know how it feels. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw him smile. Not a happy smile, a ready one. We drove toward the reckoning. Cars lined the street like they were gathering for something important. And to my family, this was important. A celebration of what they'd built, a monument to their success. They had no idea it was also the stage for their downfall. I pulled to the curb and cut the engine. Through the windshield, I counted at least 15 vehicles. My mother had invited half the neighborhood. This wasn't just a family gathering. It was a performance. A chance to show off what the Collins family could afford. "There are a lot of cars," Ethan said quietly. "Grandma likes an audience." The house looked different than last week. Fresh landscaping near the entrance, new potted plants flanking the door. Someone had power washed the driveway. They'd dressed up the exterior like they were